the phrase I'm most cautious of is AI-driven foresight. I think that one of the byproducts of AI is that somehow there is a belief among a lot of people that the algorithm is infallible. They've become accustomed to just typing in a question and getting an answer. And of course, the big weakness of AI is you ask it a silly question, it'll almost certainly give you a silly answer.
Welcome to MRII's Insights and Innovators podcast, where we talk to top market research professionals to get their inside stories about innovative and enduring best practices. Now, here's your host for today's episode.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining today's episode of Insights and Innovators. I'm your host for today, Stan Stanunathan. Today's topic is transformation for creating impact. In other words, making sure that the insights function finds its mojo and is seen as critical for business decisions that the C-suite people are grappling with. Today, we have lined up a great guest for this topic, James Cummings, VP of Insights at Kenvue. JC has spent a long time in the world of insights and therefore has a very balanced point of view on the discipline. In this episode, JC shares his perspective on how to take the insights function to the next level based on his experience in all the big companies he has worked in. Whether you're on the client side or on the agency side, I am 100% sure you'll find this insight that he'll be sharing with us incredibly invaluable in shaping your career as well as shaping your role of your agency or the function that you're leading. Welcome, JC.
Thank you very much, Stan. It's a pleasure to be here.
Same here, JC. Thank you. And it's an honor to interview you. Great. To get this conversation started, what are the big changes that you're witnessing today in the world of insights? And what are the big threats and what are the opportunities as you see them?
Wow. Opening with an easy one. I like it. So with that softball, what are the big changes? I think one of the biggest changes you just see is in everybody's titles. I mean, I'm the VP of Consumer and Business Intelligence previously. I've been the head of Insights and Analytics. And it's not enough to just be the the consumer and shopper insights person. Insights team need to be organizational operators. Deep human empathy is a cost of entry, but we also need to be data and tech literate in a way that perhaps we didn't need to be when I started my career 30 years or so ago, far too long. Wired into the IT data and tech matrix, as well as marketing, sales, R&D. We need to speak a lot of internal languages, able to synthesize and translate our findings for many different audiences coming from different perspectives. Other big change, data abundance. Everybody has data. Not all of it's good, but everybody has a lot of data. Everyone, therefore, has insight. Everybody needs to be an analyst. One function can't do it all. It changes our role. We need to consider evolving to be coaches, to be holders of best practice, to set standards. And it's a cliche, but more data, more understanding, more speed brings more complexity. And with complexity, I think one of the biggest changes that I've seen is managing that complexity by bringing the right balance of flexibility and structure. Historically, it was all about structure. Being able to make the simple things simple, create one way of operating so that global organizations could operate efficiently with common language, common metrics, common measures, and that's still important. But the tech side of the business is moving so fast. We also need to have the flexibility to experiment, to bring in new, to reflect the fact that we will have different insight horizons in different markets based on the data that's available, and hence getting that balance right is quite different. So I guess the second part of your question, threats and opportunities, I'm going to work on the assumption that opportunities are the other side of the coin from a threat. But fundamentally, the existential threat for the insights function is in this world where everybody has data, everybody at least believes that they can do insight, that we might share titles with chief data and analytics officers or other parts of the organization. There's always a threat that insights gets pushed down the organizational value ladder. Um, and with AI can do a lot of the basic analysis that perhaps insights functions were dependent on in the past. So in some people's minds, we might have lost some of our competitive edge. But the irony of that is the core proposition of the insights function has never been more relevant. We are super well suited as a function to be the humans in the loop. Um, we are independent, expert, able to connect the dots, able to tell the story while having the empathy to bring a human touch and make sure that the organizations that organizations are serving, ultimately serving their end boss, which is the consumer, the shopper. And I don't think anybody else in the organization is able to do that. But in that context, it's critical that we keep those skills super sharp, so we don't allow ourselves to just become project managers, implementers, change managers. The phrase I'm most cautious of is AI-driven foresight. I think that one of the byproducts of AI is that somehow there is a belief among a lot of people that the algorithm is infallible. They've become accustomed to just typing in a question and getting an answer. And of course, the big weakness of AI is you ask it a silly question, it'll almost certainly give you a silly answer, and hallucinates all the time. Just to give you an example, a little humble brag, if I may, but one of my daughters is quite talented with English. She's an English major, but obviously she minors in other classes like psychology. And she's constantly getting picked up by the AI algorithms that the school are using, uh, stating that the pieces are so well written, they must have been written by Gen AI.
Okay.
But but that's not the case. And so we've got to be really careful that the organization can get seduced by the perfection of AI, where we know that that's not true. And that, in fact, even the ability at times for AI models that are based on the past to predict the future in this sort of complex adaptive system that is the global economy, especially right now, is quite limited. So our ability to really understand the application of AI, how it can generate scenarios, but ultimately it's not about one answer. It's
Hmm.
about a horizon of different futures and requiring that human judgment to determine which are most likely, how to hedge, how to spread our bets, how to win in a future state is really fundamentally human. And I think that that is a huge opportunity for the insights function.
Hmm.
Not least of which because these big questions, these big AI systems, they can tend to get deployed transversely and, and really cutting across a lot of different functional boundaries. And the insights function having a broad remit, being able to connect the dots, positioning across marketing and sales as being the voice of human, and our focus on driving real decisions, I think is just a giant opportunity for us.
Beautifully put, JC. Thank you so much. I think the whole notion that AI will solve world hunger problem is something that I always struggled with because my definition of AI is slightly different. I always call it augmenting human intelligence.
Yep,
Yeah. So yeah, in my own company also we call it augmenting intelligence as opposed to artificial intelligence. The whole
exactly.
notion of artificial sounds so synthetic to me. Uh, anyway, the it reference human understanding and human centricity and the final boss and so on and so forth. When you talked about, uh, do you see that as a unique competitive angle for us as a function to get the importance that we deserve in an organization? And why do you say that?
So Absolutely. I think that at the end of the day, marketing, sales, driving demand and activating, it's quite simple.
Mhm.
And whether that's true in an online or an offline complex context, we managed to make it impossibly complicated. But really making sure that we're winning across these multiple consumer horizons really is fundamentally a human process, understanding the science of behavior that's constantly evolving as consumers are stimulated by more and more things, being able to find that right balance of standardization with flexibility so that we can produce genuinely unique solutions that win in the marketplace is critical. And for me, the human centricity provides you your point of difference. For the large part, everybody has the same data.
Mhm.
Everybody has this working with similar frameworks for growth. Yet some people are winning and some people are losing. And those people who find their edge are able to connect the dots better, faster, in a more unique and more original way, are able to take risks, yet at the same time measure and understand the things that are working and why they're working so that they can optimize very rapidly. I don't buy into the view that it's just a scale game and the person with the most data wins and all markets ultimately devolve to a market leader and a fast follower. Um, as the big middle gets squeezed, most big players are actually getting nibbled to death by the agile, the insurgent brands, the brands that really understand their channel, their consumer better than anybody else. So I think that, as I said, as a function, we can find the magic symbiosis between machines and humans. We can make that understanding and foresight real. We can help leverage the online infinite shelf, manage new deliverable models based on, excuse my language, that most old school of frameworks, understanding who needs what, when, where, and why. The basics are pretty much what they've always been.
Yep, they always been the same. Absolutely. So, given that, um, you know, obviously there are some different skills that are required to make
Yeah.
sure that we all succeed in the marketplace in our respective roles. So, based on your experience, what are the leadership and influencing skills that are required to be a change agent in a world which is changing so rapidly? Can you give
Yeah.
us,
So
bring that to life with some specific examples from your own
okay.
experience?
As you know, Stan, I have to be a little bit careful with specific examples.
Yeah.
But look, if I take the one example, the biggest change vector at present that I'm seeing in the business seems to be the implementation of agent-based AI solutions, particularly into domains like media and pricing. So wearing my analytics hat for a minute. Um, and as I think I mentioned earlier, what's different is that these changes are really replacing a lot of the work that perhaps junior team members would have done previously. Um, Consequently, the that change vector is particularly prominent among the more senior middle managers and above. So in addition, the groups of people that we're needing to empower are to some extent becoming smaller and more specialized. So I think it's that capacity to connect with more senior leaders to help them understand the business case, the rationale for change, and make the complicated simple but not simple-minded. At the end of the day, we've got a whole new quote. The irony is we've got a whole new cohort of people that need to be expert users in these solutions that are not necessarily digitally native. And so we have to be very clear in how we communicate, be empathetic with our internal stakeholders as we are with our external, with the humans that we're serving, really help folks to understand, bring them along a journey at their own pace, tailor our materials so that we can help more senior leaders to really champion our agenda, and to help drive these new technologies so that we can focus on the big questions.
Hmm. Again, it goes back to, the comment that you made earlier on about human centricity. This could be, not just human centricity, but also stakeholder centricity.
Yeah.
That's what you're talking about. How do we talk in a way in which you don't you land messages clearly? That's really useful. Thank you so much. Um, Now let's click it down to a slightly different level. I mean, you manage a good team of people. What advice and coaching would you give to your team members to make sure that they're able to create the type of impact and value for senior leadership that you feel is actually vital for their own long-term success?
Okay, so the advice that I always give folks is firstly seize opportunity where it arises. Don't be afraid to take a warrior stance. Be unafraid of conflict. I think there is a danger with insights functions that we can become organizational people pleasers.
Hmm.
And I think that there's nothing great, there's no bigger kiss of death than taking that position. We need to have a point of view, almost especially when it's unpopular. We can't forget why we're here, that we need to be the independent voice that speaks truth to power, that we're connecting the dots, that we're focused on driving better, faster decisions, that we don't get bogged down doing other people's jobs for them, that we're very, very clear on our value proposition to the business, while at the same time recognizing that right now the game change, you already alluded to it, is the biggest game in town, right? We're all caught in this transformania that is endless and ongoing. And within that, I think that one of the advice that I always give people is that always bear in mind that change is a social process. That actually our capacity to bring people together to create that adaptive space, that it's not about it's a little bit of a myth, I think, that the change management industry has managed to perpetuate, that if you do a certain set of things to get to a certain set of things in a certain order, you inevitably get to a certain outcome. Where actually it's fundamentally about people, bringing them together, letting them talk things through, recognizing everybody's on a journey, and part of our job is to bring them along with us with a clear view of what the end state is.
Awesome. You know, I picked a couple of phrases which I'm going to be liberally using going forward and cite you, obviously. One is transformania. That, it captures it beautifully for me. There is absolute uh, mania around transformation. Number one. Number two, change is a social process. Very profound, very profound. And I think, when you start looking at it that way, you will behave differently, you will include people differently, you will influence people differently because it is a social process. So, wonderful. Very well said, JV. Now, we talked about people, in your team, but let's talk about, your agency partners.
Yeah.
How can, what would be your advice to them to elevate the game?
Okay. So the advice I always give my agency partners is firstly, I need them, first and foremostly, I need them to help make the simple things simple and to simplify my job and simplify my team. As I mentioned earlier, the biggest threat to insights functions is we just get bogged down in the project management side of the business, and we're not focused on the tip of the spear and adding value. Within that, if I'm working with agencies that are bringing in new, it's really critical that they help me to retire the old. Too often, we've got legacy systems in place, all those Excel spreadsheets that exist across the business, for which we have much better internal solutions. I need my agencies to help me with that task. And then, don't just bring data tech PowerPoint. I really need strategic partners, not suppliers. And I'm consolidating to a certain extent into a smaller group of suppliers that can really help me to do that. Because, as we mentioned, we're bogged down, and well, we're not bogged down. We're driving transformania. The business is getting infinitely more complicated. The speed of change is accelerating. I need people that are not just bringing me solutions, but are helping to elevate the capabilities of my team, as well as creating opportunities for my team to excel. The partners that they work with, I see as just being a critical driver of engagement for my team. And I really need them to work with me to make sure that we're elevating the entire function.
Hmm. That's very, very nice. Thank you so much. Um, I'm going to request you to, put on look at an eight ball, so to say, yeah,
Yeah.
and see and predict where do you see the world of insights in, let's say, 3 years' time. I'm not asking you for an impossible timeline like 5 years or
Yeah,
10
yeah.
years, because who knows? But in 3 years' time, where do you see? You have a point of view?
Yeah. The danger with these questions, right, is always that we we kind of overestimate the short term and underestimate the long term.
Hmm.
So I'm probably in danger of falling into both of those traps. But um, I I actually think we lose the title insights. I think that the insights itself is becoming a commodity as a phrase. I mean, part of that's a function of the fact that a lot of organizations still don't really understand insights versus data versus facts. But let's put that aside. Um, Insights is becoming a commodity. I think we need to position ourselves and title ourselves as decision enablers, and really using that proprietary blend of data, algorithmic understanding, analytics platforms, human empathy to drive faster, better decisions across that right balance of structure and flexibility. I think we're going to see more. We're going to operate with a smaller number of platform-based suppliers that can make the simple things simple. And then we'll work with a much larger group of smaller, very, very specialized suppliers that have proprietary tech, algorithms, perspective, and really getting that balance right is really, I think, is going to be the biggest change in that 3-year horizon.
You know, JC, as you were talking, a PowerPoint chart popped up in my mind. It's
That,
actually a square, four corners being data, tech, algorithm, and human centricity.
yeah,
Right in the center is decision enablement,
right.
and how all these things converge towards driving decision enablement. That's what I saw when you were talking.
I,
And
I'm,
those were
I,
exactly your words. I'm not.
I'm gonna steal that, my friend. Unfortunately, we're all corporate citizens and can only communicate via PowerPoint, so it's all good.
Yeah, that's wonderful. So I think JC, first of all, thank you so much. I want to bring a close to this conversation. I think uh, I learned a lot in this conversation today. I learned a lot, and I'm 100% sure people who listen to this podcast will go away with some incredible pearls of wisdom, some, good thoughtware that, hopefully keeps them awake at night and makes them think a little bit differently about what they want to do going forward with their life in general, and more importantly, their role in insights. And even more importantly, where do they see themselves going forward, and what kind of path they want to chart out for themselves. So, JC, thank you so much for this time that you spent. Really grateful for that. I look forward to staying in touch with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Stan. It's been a pleasure. Take care, my friend.
Thanks for joining the Insights and Innovators podcast from Market Research Institute International. Click subscribe to never miss an episode and visit us at mrii.org for more market research insights.